Today's reading is not from Luke as printed in the bulletin. It's actually from the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11, verses 1 through 3, and chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Please feel free to read along by turning to page 225 in the New Testament portion of your Pew Bibles. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Indeed, by faith, our ancestors received approval. By faith, we understand that the worlds we prepared by the word of God, so that when it is seen, was made from things that are not visible. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, so let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarded its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne. May the spirit of wisdom guide our understanding of this scripture.
Thanks be to God.
Loving God, it is our prayer just now that the words of my mouth, and especially today, O God, the meditations of our hearts as we reflect on the ones who've shown us the way, might indeed be pleasing to you, for you remain our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I have a confession to make to you all this morning. I may as well just get it right out there in the open right away. I've always been a bit of a Scrooge when it comes to the topic of heaven. It isn't so much whether I believe in heaven or not, as much as it is how important the whole notion of heaven should be when it comes to us living out our faith and following Jesus. I've always been a bit reluctant when it comes to the whole idea of heaven. I guess a few things that have happened over the years have laid the foundation for this reluctance, if you will, this feeling that when it comes to heaven, I just don't know. One of the first times I began to question the whole heaven thing was when my friend Craig Kennedy died when we were all in high school. Craig was a big kid, a teddy bear kind of a kid. He was sweet. He mostly liked to be alone for the most part, and he especially liked to be alone and to hunt. He was a big hunter. He would go in the woods behind his house there in southern Maryland to go out hunting. One day Craig went out to do some hunting, and there was a terrible accident. My friend Craig died when the shotgun he was using went off accidentally when he laid it on a log. At least that was the story we were told when they gathered us there at school to break the news to us. Craig's funeral was at St. John Catholic Church right there in the heart of downtown Clinton. And I got the impression that Craig's family, they were very devoutly Catholic. His funeral, I think, was maybe the first funeral I ever attended. And it was definitely the first Catholic Mass I ever attended. I'd just been baptized, so as a good disciple, when the invitation for communion was offered, I charged right up there to the front. I had no idea that I wasn't supposed to take communion, put my hand out, and got kind of a funny look from the priest. But it was all good. Didn't know that much about the Catholic Church. I knew that they made kids my age go to Sunday school on Saturday, which seemed kind of unfair. What I also didn't know, though, about the Catholic Church was how we felt about people taking their own lives. So at the funeral there was talk. You know how there's talk when a bunch of kids are at a place like that. There was talk among Craig's friends that maybe he staged the circumstances around his death to make it seem like it was accidental. You see, Craig was a pretty good hunter. He knew his way around safety. He was a pretty good hunter, but that didn't make him a very happy person. The talk was that Craig wanted his death to appear accidental because if it was indeed something else, his beliefs made him worried that his family and friends would wonder where he would spend eternity, or whether he would spend that eternity in a place other than heaven, the heaven he so richly deserved. I think that was my first experience with a belief system that included the notion that after we die, we go to heaven, some of us, others not so much. Craig was the nicest kid ever. I always used to love the way he pushed his glasses up on his nose. It was so endearing. But I guess he didn't fit in very well. And the idea that someone who didn't fit in very well on this earth wasn't going to be allowed into the next, that one threw me for a loop. And it made me think, wait, I don't know. I don't know about this heaven business. That was a long time ago. 10 years later, when I was a student minister at Centenary Christian Church in Indianapolis, I went to visit good old Nettie Doll, Saint Nettie. Walked down the street from the church to see her in her house where she lived, because Nettie wasn't getting out much anymore. Nettie Doll. The very same Nettie Doll who had just turned 100 years old the year before. The very same Nettie Doll who was awarded Volunteer of the Year from an organization called the Little Red Door. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of the Little Red Door. It used to give people an opportunity to make what they called cancer pads out of several layered sheets of newspaper and then a white top sheet all sewed together, lay them on the bed, throw them away. Nettie Doll made thousands and thousands of cancer pads over the years. While her hands still worked well, she crocheted all of those hundreds of little preemie hats that they give to the babies in the NICU. Oh, Saint Nettie, she was. When she was no longer able to get out of the house, I visited Nettie, and while I was there, she asked this question. It was a worried, real question. Rick, she said, do you think I've lived a good enough life to make it into heaven? Excuse me, Nettie? I don't know, she said, but I worry. There are so many people that I'm so eager to see, and I'm just not sure I'm going to get there. Being a young and fairly inexperienced pastor, I tried to make light of her fear. Nettie, if you're not going to heaven, there's no prayer for me, or most of the rest of us, for that matter. But she wasn't having any of it. No, this is a serious question for her. And the thought that Nettie Doll, Saint Nettie, was standing in the threshold between this world and whatever might be next, and she was more worried than assured. I don't know. I just don't know. When it comes to heaven, I just don't know. The summer before that, Jana and I had gone out to work in Yellowstone Park for the summer to work for an organization called a Christian Ministry in the National Parks. We would work our jobs by day. Some of us got to cut up vegetables for 8 hours in the kitchen of the Old Faithful Inn. Others of us drove a boat out on Lake Yellowstone. And then on the weekends we would step into our phone booths and change into ministers who would offer worship services for park visitors who were so inclined to go to church during vacation, or who were working on their perfect attendance pins. I signed forms. That was the thing. My roommate that summer worked for the same organization. His name was Scott Day. Excuse me. Scott was an evangelical Christian. He was on fire for the Lord. He knew his Bible. He knew people. He knew how to lead a study. He was awesome. He was so energetic. Scott was also gay. And that was a problem 40 years ago for someone who was an evangelical Christian. It's a big problem. And Scott used to tell me, he used to say, Rick, I don't mind being kicked out of my church. I'm not there that much anyway, but you know what? I am absolutely terrified about what's going to happen to me after, no, Scott, no, that's not right. You are you, that can't be. But no matter what I said, I couldn't convince him. The idea, the very notion of such a heaven that wouldn't have room for Scott. Sometimes I feel like a Scrooge when it comes to the idea of heaven, and I just don't know. I love the idea of playing singles with my father on a heavenly tennis court, because in my heaven, I win all the time. And he's happy about it. I love the idea of sitting in the heavenly kitchen while my mom prepares, serves, and then cleans up a heavenly supper just for me. But then Nettie Dog comes along, and this whole heaven thing backfires on me. Scott hates who God made him to be, and the whole heaven thing, I just don't know. Has this ever happened to you? Maybe not, but it's happened to me a few times. When I've attended a funeral of someone, especially someone who's died suddenly or died way too soon, sometimes when I've attended those services, they've been beautiful and they've been healing and wonderful, but sometimes at these services, there's so much talk about heaven, I feel like I've almost been scolded for being so sad. Don't be sad, we're sometimes told. This person has gone on to glory and is looking down on us even now. We should rejoice. Yeah, no. I'd prefer to have them right by my side, and I'm very sad that they aren't. She may be in a better place, but it is definitely not the place that I prefer her to be. That may be when I feel my Scroogiest about heaven. This notion of heaven is out there to make us feel guilty on top of feeling sad, but I don't know. This notion of heaven is sometimes out there to justify what can only be described as bad behavior, right? Do this and you'll get to heaven. Sometimes despicable behavior. Sometimes despicable behavior that results in mass casualties for someone just to earn their way into heaven. I just don't know. I almost wonder sometimes if the whole idea of heaven has done just about as much harm as it's done good. Humbug. I know. But then I remember other stories. Like the story of our own Jerry Paradiso. Jerry joined the church with his family 10 years ago. It was right around the time we were doing our renovations. And not too long after that, he was in his mid-40s, maybe, kids still in school. Jerry was diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer. Now, from the very beginning, Jerry was going to beat it. He was going to walk his daughter down the graduation aisle first and then the wedding aisle. Jerry was going to be that guy who was going to beat cancer. Until the very week they took his life. I was on sabbatical when Jerry died, so I couldn't be there, but I was told by his wife, Kathy, and his best friend, Tim, that just before Jerry passed away, in the room there in the hospital, he went from looking at the two of them who were there to almost beyond the two of them, and a smile ran across his face. The two looked around and couldn't see who he might have been looking at. And then Jerry motioned, and Kathy said, what is it, Jerry? Do you want us to take out the breathing tube? Jerry continued to smile and nodded yes, knowing full well what that meant. I don't know. Maybe it was a morphine drip, something more. I just don't know. And like so many of you, I've been in that hospital room when it's been transformed into a thin place that has felt much more like an entrance into what lies ahead than a cubicle in intensive care. I don't know. You all have been there at the meal that follows the funeral service, right? When the stories are told and there's laughter that's just as real as the tears. Is that a taste of what heaven is like? I don't know. Maybe you felt the palpable presence of someone who is supposed to be no longer with us, that is still with us. Is that heaven? I don't know. So I guess I'm here to say on this All Saints Day, when it comes to heaven, it's true. I just don't know. But I've decided that I don't know is good enough. In fact, when it comes to heaven, I don't know, maybe even better than I am certain, because it seems to me that the minute we begin to define this thing called heaven, this thing that we really can't know, the minute we try to define heaven, if you will, and then impose that definition on somebody else, that's the moment when our heaven gets too small. What is a definition but a boundary, and what is a boundary but a line? It's drawn between those who are in and those who are out. The author of the letter of Hebrews said it beautifully, I think. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things unseen. For me, this is a scriptural suggestion that when it comes to heaven, I don't know, it's good enough. The power of heaven is that it is unseen. The power of heaven happens when its possibility allows us to live in hope and wonder that what we do and who we are ultimately matter. If that is what heaven is, I'm no longer a Scrooge. If that is what heaven is, I am all in.
When I close my eyes so I could not see, my Lord did trouble me. When I let things stand that should not be, my Lord did trouble me.